The heart monitor screamed a single, flat note, signaling my end to the room. My husband did not cry. He squeezed his mistress's hand, a smile twitching at the corner of his mouth as he thought about the $50 million he believed was now his. He had no idea the doctor standing over my body was not declaring my time of death, but rather waiting for the right moment to destroy him. My name is Elena. At 32 years old, I felt ancient. The 8th month of pregnancy had turned my body into a swollen, aching vessel that I barely recognized in the mirror. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows of our sprawling estate in the Chicago suburbs, the wind howled, driving snow against the glass in violent bursts. It was a bitter, relentless winter, yet it felt warmer outside than it did in this living room. I shifted on the velvet sofa, trying to find a position that did not make my lower back scream in protest, but relief was impossible. Marcus paced in front of the fireplace. As the CEO of Omnitech, he loved to play the part of the visionary genius. But I knew the reality. He was a man drowning in his own incompetence, desperate to keep his head above water while maintaining the illusion of success. He stopped pacing and glared at me, his eyes cold and devoid of the affection that had tricked me years ago. "Can you please just stop shifting around?" Marcus snapped, running a hand through his hair. "The sound of the cushions is driving me insane. I am trying to save this company. Elena, I am sorry," I whispered, though I had no reason to be. Vanessa was there. Of course, she was always there. Ostensibly his executive assistant, she acted more like the lady of the house than I did. She sat perched on the arm of the sofa near him, her skirt riding high up her thigh. She reached out and smoothed the lapel of his jacket, her fingers lingering on his chest for a second too long. "He is just stressed." "Sweetie," Vanessa cooed at me, her voice dripping with faux sympathy. "Maybe you should go upstairs. You look exhausted." From the high-backed armchair in the corner, my mother-in-law, Beatrice, let out a dry, rattling laugh. She sipped her tea, her eyes scanning my distended figure with undisguised disgust. "She does not just look exhausted. Vanessa, she looks like a bloated whale," Beatrice said, setting her cup down with a sharp clink. "Honestly, Marcus, I do not know how you bear it. The women of our line carried their pregnancies with dignity. Elena just looks sloppy." I bit the inside of my cheek to keep from screaming. Earlier that morning, while sorting the laundry, I had found a receipt in the pocket of Marcus's blazer. It was from a jeweler downtown. It was for a diamond tennis bracelet costing $12,000. I had foolishly confronted him about it before lunch. "It is for a client's wife, Elena." Marcus had shouted, looming over me until I shrank back against the wall. "You are being paranoid." "Again. God, your hormones are making you impossible to be around. You are crazy. Do you hear me? Crazy." He had taken the receipt and burned it in the ashtray, erasing the evidence while staring me down. "Now." Marcus checked his watch and cleared his throat. "I have an announcement. I have to fly to Aspen tomorrow morning for a summit. It is a crucial networking opportunity for Omnitech." My heart hammered against my ribs. "Aspen, Marcus. The doctor said I could go into labor any day now." "You cannot leave. Do not be dramatic." He scoffed, waving a hand dismissively. "You are not due for another 3 weeks. Besides, Vanessa is coming with me to handle the logistics. I need total focus. I cannot have you calling me every 5 minutes complaining about a backache." Vanessa flashed a tight, triumphant smile. They were not going for business. I looked at the packed bags near the door. They were going to celebrate. Suddenly, a sharp, twisting pain shot through my abdomen. It was different from the usual aches. It was a vice gripping my insides. I gasped, clutching the side of the sofa. "Marcus," I managed to say, my voice trembling. He did not even look up from his phone. He was showing Vanessa something on the screen, and they were both chuckling. I realized then that I was completely alone. I forced myself to stand, ignoring the way my legs shook. I walked slowly out of the room, past their laughter and Beatrice's scornful gaze. I made my way into the small library down the hall and closed the heavy oak door, locking it. The pain subsided for a moment, leaving me breathless. I pulled a burner phone from the hidden pocket of my maternity dress. My hands were steady now. The tears that had threatened to fall in the living room were gone, replaced by a cold resolve. I dialed a number I had memorized months ago. "Arthur speaking," a deep voice answered on the second ring. I took a breath, my voice shifting from the weak, submissive wife to the woman I used to be. "It is time," I said clearly. "They are leaving for Aspen tomorrow. Execute Plan B." "Understood." "Elena," Arthur replied. "Stay strong. We are ready." I hung up and stared out the window at the snow. The pain in my stomach returned, sharper this time, but I welcomed it. It was the only honest thing I had felt in months. 7 years ago, I was a different woman. I was not the swollen, silent wife hiding in a library. I was Elena, a rising star in the interior design world of Chicago. I had my own firm, my own clients, and a secret that nobody knew. My father had left me a quiet fortune, an inheritance built on decades of shrewd real estate investments. I lived simply because I wanted to be loved for who I was, not for the balance in my bank account. Then came Marcus. He swept into my life like a storm, all charisma and bright smiles. He wore tailored suits that he could not afford and spoke of Omnitech as if it were the next global giant. He did not see a plain designer. He saw an audience. "We are going to change the world. Elena," he had whispered to me on our third date, his eyes shining with a fervor that I mistook for passion. "I just need someone who believes in me." I believed. I believed so much that when the cracks in his business plan appeared mere months after our wedding, I stepped in. I did not just offer emotional support. I offered my inheritance. I funneled money into Omnitech through shell companies, allowing him to believe he had secured angel investors. I let him stand on stages and accept awards for success that my money had bought. The irony was bitter on my tongue now. My mother-in-law, Beatrice, and Marcus's younger sister treated me like a charity case. I remembered a dinner 3 years ago. I was wearing a dress I had bought off the rack to save money for Marcus's new server farm. "You really should try harder, Elena," Beatrice had sniffed, cutting into a steak that my trust fund had paid for. "Marcus is a man of status. People will think he married a pauper. Honestly, it is embarrassing that a man of his caliber settled for a nobody like you." I had smiled and apologized. I had let them call me a gold digger in hushed tones while they lived in the house I paid for, drove the cars I leased, and drank the wine I imported. Slowly, I eroded. I quit my job because Marcus said he needed a wife who was fully available to host his dinners. I cut off my friends because he said they were jealous of our success. I became a ghost in my own life. When I got pregnant, I thought things would change. I thought a child would bring back the man who had promised to build a world with me. Instead, my changing body only gave him an excuse to look elsewhere. "God, Elena, cover yourself up," he had said to me last month when I walked out of the bathroom. "You look repulsive. How am I supposed to be attracted to that?" He did not know I had seen the texts from Vanessa that night. He did not know that while I was crying in the nursery, he was sending her photos of diamond necklaces. The final dagger had come only 6 months ago. Omnitech was drowning again. Marcus was frantic, facing bankruptcy that would expose his incompetence to the world. He needed capital, and he had tapped out every resource. I did the unthinkable. I sold the downtown loft my parents had left me. It was the place where I grew up, the last physical tether to the people who had actually loved me. I sold it and transferred the funds to his account, disguised as a lucky break from an overseas vendor. I saved us. "Babe," he had cheered, popping a bottle of champagne that night. He did not ask how the problem was solved. He did not care. Sitting in the dim light of the library, I touched the cold window pane. I had burned my past to keep him warm. I had sacrificed my career, my dignity, and my parents' legacy to feed a man who was now packing his bags to celebrate my labor with his mistress. I realized then that I had not been nurturing a husband. I had been feeding a parasite, and parasites do not stop until there is nothing left. No more, I whispered to the empty room. No more feeding the beast. The walls of Omnitech were crumbling, and the dust was choking our home. The panic in the air was palpable. Marcus had spent the last week screaming into his phone, firing executives, and throwing crystal tumblers against the fireplace. The company was bleeding cash, and without an immediate infusion of capital, his house of cards would collapse within 48 hours. $50 million, Marcus hissed, pacing the length of our bedroom while I sat on the edge of the bed, clutching a pillow. I need $50 million by Friday, or the board votes me out. Do you understand what that means? Elena, we lose everything. He stopped and turned to me, his eyes wild. The trust fund, the one your father set up for the baby. I widened my eyes, feigning horror. Marcus, we cannot touch that. It is locked until the birth. It is for our child's future. It is for my future, he roared, grabbing my shoulders. If I am bankrupt, the kid has no future anyway. Sign the release. I know you have power of attorney over the dormant assets. I let my lip tremble, looking down at the floor. I cannot unlock it myself, but my father had an old friend, a private investor. He owes my family a favor. Maybe he can help Marcus Froze. Greed instantly replaced his anger. Who can he move $50 million in 24 hours? His name is Arthur, I whispered, keeping my voice small. But he is very strict about contracts. 2 hours later, we were sitting in the expansive oak-paneled conference room of Arthur's law firm downtown. The atmosphere was heavy with the scent of leather and old money. I sat in the corner, making myself look as small as possible. Marcus sat at the head of the table, flanked by Vanessa on his right and his mother, Beatrice on his left. Vanessa had insisted on coming to take notes, though she was currently busy checking her reflection in her compact mirror. Beatrice was there simply because she refused to be left out of any event involving large sums of money. Arthur walked in, looking every bit the formidable legal titan he was. He placed a binder on the table. It was thick, at least 300 pages of dense legal text. Mr. Sterling, Arthur said, his voice smooth and devoid of emotion. This is the investment agreement. It stipulates that $50 million will be transferred to Omnitech's operating account upon signature. However, the collateral clauses are extensive. Marcus didn't even open the binder. He stared hungrily at the pen in Arthur's hand. I do not care about the fine print. Does the money clear today? It does, Arthur replied, sliding the document toward him. But I must advise you to read Section 88 regarding breach of contract and moral turpitude. It involves total asset forfeiture in the event of standard liability crap, Marcus interrupted, waving his hand dismissively. He grabbed the pen. Marcus, honey, just sign it, Vanessa whispered, leaning into him, her chest pressing against his arm. Think about the Aspen trip. We need this done so we can celebrate. Beatrice checked her diamond watch and sighed loudly. Please, Marcus. My driver has been waiting downstairs for 45 minutes. I need to get to the spa. Do not waste time reading legal jargon that you pay people to understand for you. Arthur looked at me. It was a fleeting glance, invisible to the others, but I saw the question in his eyes. Are you sure I looked at Marcus? He was sweating, his leg bouncing nervously under the table. He wasn't thinking about the company. He wasn't thinking about me or our unborn twins. He was thinking about the power, the fame, and the freedom that $50 million would buy him. I think you should read it, Marcus, I stammered, making sure my voice sounded weak and annoying. "Shut up, Elena," Marcus snapped. "This is business. Go sit in the lobby if you are going to be a distraction." He flipped to the last page. He didn't even glance at the text above the signature line. He pressed the nib of the expensive fountain pen to the paper and scribbled his name with a flourish. "Done," Marcus declared, slamming the binder shut. "Transfer the funds." Vanessa clapped her hands in delight, and Beatrice finally smiled. They looked like vultures who had just secured a fresh carcass. I sat back in my chair, wrapping my arms around my belly, underneath my cardigan. My hands were trembling, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of victory. Marcus thought he had just signed a lifeline. He had no idea he had just signed his own death warrant. The trap was sprung, and the steel jaws were about to snap shut. The notification from the bank must have arrived at 3 in the afternoon, because by 7 in the evening, my home had been transformed into a nightclub. The bass from the stereo system shook the floorboards beneath my swollen feet. Marcus had invited everyone, board members, potential partners, and the sycophants who clung to him like barnacles. They were drinking champagne that cost $300 a bottle, celebrating the influx of $50 million that they believed had saved the company. I moved through the crowd like a ghost, clutching a glass of water. My back was throbbing with a dull, rhythmic ache that I had been ignoring for hours. Elena Beatrice's voice cut through the noise like a whip. She was holding court on the patio, wrapped in a fur coat. "Do not just stand there hovering. It is creeping the guests out. The ice bucket is empty. Go tell the staff to refill it. Honestly, you are useless. I will get it. Beatrice," I said, lowering my head to hide the flash of hatred in my eyes. "Good. And try to smile," she hissed. "You look miserable. You are ruining the mood." I turned away, navigating the sea of expensive suits and cocktail dresses. Near the fireplace, Vanessa was laughing, her head thrown back. Around her neck sat a diamond choker that I had never seen before. It caught the light of the chandelier, glittering violently. I knew exactly where the money for that necklace had come from. It was part of the operating costs from the new investment. As I passed the study, I heard Marcus's voice. The door was slightly ajar. I stopped, pressing myself against the wall shadows. He was on the phone, likely with his personal divorce attorney. "Yeah, the money is secure," Marcus said, his voice slurring slightly from the alcohol. "Now we move to phase 2. As soon as she drops the kid, I want the papers served. We are going for full custody. I will claim she is mentally unstable. Beatrice can testify to her erratic behavior." There was a pause as he listened to the person on the other line. "Don't worry about the assets." Marcus laughed, a cold, ugly sound. "I am already moving the liquid cash into accounts under Mom's name. Elena will walk away with nothing but the clothes on her back. She is too stupid to check the books." I felt a kick from inside my womb, hard and sharp. It was as if the babies had heard him. I did not cry. I did not storm into the room and scream. That was what the old Elena would have done. The new Elena simply turned around and walked up the grand staircase, one heavy step at a time. Inside the master bedroom, I locked the door. I went to the walk-in closet and pushed aside a row of winter coats to reveal the small wall safe hidden behind a panel. My fingers moved deftly over the keypad. Inside sat a thick medical file and a small, high-fidelity voice recorder. I took them out. The recorder's red light blinked once, confirming it had been active. I had planted a bug in the study 3 days ago. I had just captured his confession in high definition. I sat at my vanity and pulled out a piece of stationery. My hand was steady as I wrote, "To my little ones, the world you are entering is cold, but I promise to be your fire. I will burn the weeds so you can have a garden to grow in. They think I am weak. They think I am broken. But they do not know that a mother's love is the most dangerous weapon on earth." I folded the note and placed it in the file. Suddenly, a pain unlike anything I had ever felt tore through my lower body. It was not the dull ache from before. It was a shearing force, as if my pelvis were being pulled apart. I gasped, clutching the edge of the table. Liquid gushed down my legs, soaking the carpet. I looked at the clock. It was midnight. Outside, the wind howled as a blizzard buried the city in white. The snow was falling thick and fast, trapping us in this house of lies. It is time, I whispered through gritted teeth. I reached for the door handle, another contraction bringing me to my knees. The babies were coming, and they were coming now. The party downstairs was about to end. Marcus, please, help me. My scream tore through the heavy bass of the music downstairs, but it was swallowed by the noise of the celebration. I dragged myself to the top of the landing, my knuckles white as I gripped the banister. Through the gaps in the railing, I saw him. Marcus was in the center of the foyer, a champagne flute in one hand, his other arm wrapped tight around Vanessa's waist. She whispered something in his ear, and he threw his head back in laughter, completely oblivious to the fact that his wife was dying on the floor above him. Marcus, I shrieked again, this time with every ounce of strength I had left. The music finally cut out, not because he heard me, but because the DJ needed to change tracks. In the sudden silence, a low moan escaped my lips. Beatrice appeared at the bottom of the stairs. She looked up, her face twisting not with concern, but with annoyance. She saw the amniotic fluid soaking through my dress and dripping onto the carpet. "Oh, for God's sake!" Beatrice sighed, lifting her teacup to her lips. "Look at the mess. That rug is Persian. Elena, do you have any idea how much it costs to clean authentic wool? My water, it broke." I gasped, the pain rolling over me in a fresh wave. "Get the car." Beatrice took a slow, deliberate sip of her tea, savoring it as if we were discussing the weather. She swallowed, patted her mouth with a napkin, and then turned her head slightly toward the living room. "Marcus," she called out, her voice calm. "The girl is making a scene. We need the driver." Marcus bounded into the hallway, his face flushed with alcohol and irritation. When he saw me slumped on the floor, he took a step forward, reaching out a hand. "Stop," Beatrice barked. "Do not touch her. Marcus, you are wearing the new Armani silk. If you get those fluids on you, the suit is ruined. Let the staff handle her." Marcus froze, looking at his sleeve, then back at me. He pulled his hand back. "Right. Good point. Someone get the driver." Now the ride to St. Jude Hospital was a nightmare. The blizzard was raging outside, slamming snow against the windshield. But the chill inside the limousine was far worse. I lay across the back seat, gritting my teeth to keep from screaming as the contractions hit me 3 minutes apart. Marcus sat in the front passenger seat, scrolling through his phone. "This is unbelievable," he muttered, slamming his hand against the dashboard. "I had 3 key investors waiting to talk to me. Do you know how bad this looks? Elena, leaving my own party right when the money dropped. You always have to be the center of attention. I am coming with you." Vanessa had insisted back at the house, squeezing into the back seat next to my feet. "To support you. Marcus, you should not have to deal with this stress alone." She sat there now, reapplying her lipstick in the rearview mirror, occasionally glancing at me with a look of pure boredom. We arrived at the emergency bay of St. Jude. The automatic doors slid open, and a team of nurses rushed out with a gurney. At the head of the team was a tall man with silver hair and piercing blue eyes. Dr. Sterling. He was my father's oldest friend and the chief of obstetrics. He was also the only person in this hospital who knew the truth. "Get her to Trauma 1. Immediately, Dr. Sterling commanded, his voice booming. He looked at me for a split second, and I saw a flicker of reassurance in his eyes before the professional mask slammed back down. As they wheeled me away, I looked back. Marcus did not follow. He stayed in the waiting area. Through the glass doors, I saw him pull out his phone. I concentrated, trying to read his lips or hear his voice over the chaos of the emergency room. "Yeah, it is me," Marcus was saying, his voice carrying down the hall as the doors closed. List the house. Tonight. I want it on the market by morning. 5 million. Just sell it fast. He was selling our home while I was being wheeled into surgery. Inside the operating theater, the lights were blinding. Doctor, Sterling leaned over me. We are ready. Elena, he whispered. The cameras are rolling. Stay strong. 10 minutes later, Dr. Sterling walked out into the waiting room. I watched on the monitor inside the operating room. He looked grave, his surgical gown slightly disheveled. Mr. Sterling, the doctor said, his voice heavy. There are complications. Severe preeclampsia combined with a placental abruption. Her blood pressure is bottoming out. Marcus looked up from his phone, feigning shock. Is she going to be okay? I have to be honest, doctor, Sterling said, watching Marcus's face closely. It does not look good. We might have to choose between the mother and the children. I need to know your priority. I watched the screen, my breath held tight in my chest, waiting for the answer that would seal his fate. Dr. Sterling stepped out of the operating room doors, pulling his surgical mask down just enough to reveal a grim, tight-lipped expression. The fluorescent lights of the hallway cast long, sterile shadows across his face, making him look like the bearer of doom he was pretending to be. I watched it all from a high-definition monitor mounted on the articulated arm above the operating table. The spinal block had numbed my body from the waist down, but my mind was razor-sharp. I was wide awake, witnessing the autopsy of my marriage while I was still breathing. We need to perform an emergency C-section immediately, Dr. Sterling told them, his voice grave. I must be transparent with you. Her blood pressure has plummeted, and she is hemorrhaging. The likelihood of Elena surviving the next hour is less than 10%. I zoomed in on the screen. I wanted to see it. I needed to see the devastation, the panic, the love. Instead, I saw Beatrice's eyes widen. They did not fill with tears. They shimmered with calculation. She leaned in close to Marcus, clutching his forearm with a grip that looked painful. 10%, Beatrice whispered, her voice low but picked up clearly by the microphone I had planted in Marcus's lapel hours ago. Marcus, listen to me. The life insurance policy. We took out that jumbo policy last year. If she dies during a medical procedure, it might trigger the double indemnity clause. That is $5 million tax-free. Marcus looked at his mother, then at the doctor. He let out a long, ragged sigh, covering his face with his hands. To Dr. Sterling, it looked like a husband falling apart. To me, it looked like a man hiding a smile. Do whatever you have to do, Doctor, Marcus said, his voice cracking theatrically. Just save who you can. He took the clipboard Dr. Sterling offered and scribbled his signature on the consent form. As the doctor turned to walk back to the OR, Marcus dropped his hand to his pocket. On my screen, I saw him pull out his phone. He typed a quick message, almost free. Champagne is on ice. I squeezed my eyes shut, hot tears leaking out and sliding into my ears. They were not tears of physical pain, though the pressure in my abdomen was immense. They were tears of pure, unadulterated rage. These people had eaten my food, lived in my house, and spent my money. And now they were calculating my death benefit before my body was even cold. Down in the hospital cafeteria, the camera feed switched to the security access Arthur had hacked into. Vanessa was sitting at a corner table. She was not praying. She was not crying. She had a bridal magazine spread open in front of her and was aggressively circling a venue in Tuscany. Tuscany in the spring, she muttered to herself, taking a bite of a stale bagel. Perfect for a fresh start. Back in the operating room, the reality of life asserted itself against the backdrop of death. Pressure is good. Here we go. Elena, Dr. Sterling said softly. A moment later, a cry pierced the air. It was loud, strong, and furious. "It is a boy," the nurse announced, lifting a squirming, red infant into the air. Seconds later, a second cry joined the first, higher pitched but just as demanding. "And a girl! Doctor," Sterling said, his eyes crinkling with a genuine smile behind his mask. "Twins. And they are perfect." The nurses moved with practiced efficiency. They cleaned the babies, wrapped them tightly, and placed them into a secure incubator marked for transport. They were not going to the regular nursery. They were being taken to a private wing guarded by Arthur's private security team, safe from the vultures in the waiting room. I reached out a trembling hand and touched the glass of the incubator as they wheeled past. My son and my daughter, Noah and Emma, they were safe. They were alive. Now it was time for me to die. "Doctor," Sterling turned to the team. The heart monitor began to beep rhythmically, a steady drumbeat that was about to be silenced. "All right, everyone." "Doctor," Sterling said, his voice hardening into steel. "The babies are clear. The stage is set. Let us give them the show they are waiting for." He reached over and adjusted the settings on the cardiac monitor. The steady rhythm faltered, slowed, and then stopped. The machine let out a long, high-pitched flatline tone. "Time of death, Doctor," Sterling announced for the benefit of the recording, though he winked at me. 3:17 in the morning. I lay back, staring at the ceiling, my heart beating strong and steady in my chest, while the machine told the world I was gone. The curtain was rising on the final act, and I was ready to watch them hang themselves. The long, monotonous drone of the flatline filled the operating room, a sound that usually signaled the end of a life. To me, it sounded like the starting gun of a race I had already won. "Doctor," Sterling gave me a quick, sharp nod before turning on his heel. He pushed through the swinging doors into the waiting area, his face a mask of practiced somberness. I sat up on the gurney, the anesthesia wearing off enough for me to move my upper body. A nurse handed me my babies. Noah was on my left arm, Emma on my right. They were warm and solid against my chest. I turned my eyes to the large monitor mounted on the wall, feeding me the live stream from the hallway. "Doctor," Sterling stopped in front of the trio. He pulled off his surgical cap and bowed his head. "I am sorry," he said, his voice dropping to a respectful whisper. "We did everything we could. Elena did not make it." On the screen, Marcus covered his face with his hands. He let out a loud, strangulated noise. To the casual observer, it sounded like a sob of devastation, but I saw his shoulders. They were shaking violently. He was not crying. He was laughing. He was laughing so hard he had to physically hold his face together to keep from grinning like a maniac. Beatrice did not even pretend to cry. She stood up, smoothing down her skirt, and looked Dr. Sterling dead in the eye. "So, that is it," then she asked, her voice sharp and clear. "She is gone." "What happens to the estate?" "The trust funds. Who is the executor now?" A young nurse standing near the reception desk gasped audibly. She stared at Beatrice with horror, but my mother-in-law did not even blink. "Mother, please." "Give it a moment," Marcus said, finally lowering his hands. His eyes were dry, but his face was flushed with the exertion of suppressing his joy. "My wife just died." "Oh, stop it." "Marcus," Vanessa cut in. She came running from the vending machines, a bag of chips in her hand. She threw her arms around Marcus's neck, pressing her body against his. "We do not have to pretend anymore. The doctor is bound by confidentiality." "Right, we are free. Baby, we are finally free." Marcus wrapped his arms around her, lifting her slightly off the ground. "God, you have no idea how long I have waited for this. Every day with her was like suffocating in a wet blanket. She was so boring and useless. Beatrice added, checking her watch. She could not even host a dinner party correctly. Honestly, it is a blessing. She was just an obstacle standing between us and the lifestyle we deserve. What about the car? Vanessa asked, giggling as she kissed Marcus's cheek. Can we trade in her SUV? I want that new convertible we saw in the magazine. Done, Marcus said, grinning openly now. We will sell everything. The house, the jewelry, the cars. We are going to liquidate her entire life and take that trip to the Maldives first class. Dr. Sterling cleared his throat loudly, interrupting their celebration. Mr. Sterling, there is the matter of the child. The infant survived. Marcus's face fell. He looked at the doctor as if he had just been told his credit card was declined. The kid, Marcus, scoffed. Look, I cannot raise a baby alone. I have a company to run. I have a life to live. He looked at Beatrice. You take it. Mom. Or, I do not know. Is there a state facility? An orphanage. I do not want to be burdened with a screaming brat right now. Just put it in the system. I will sign whatever papers I need to sign to give up custody. I looked down at Noah and Emma. My heart hardened into diamond. He did not even ask if it was a boy or a girl. He just wanted to discard them like he had discarded me. Did you hear that? My loves, I whispered to the twins, kissing their foreheads. He does not want you, but that is okay, because he is never going to touch you. On the screen, the elevator doors at the end of the hall slid open with a soft chime. Arthur stepped out. He was not alone. Behind him walked 4 men in dark, tailored suits, carrying briefcases that looked heavy with evidence. They moved in perfect formation, a phalanx of legal destruction marching toward the unsuspecting group. Marcus was busy showing Vanessa a picture of a hotel suite on his phone. Beatrice was calculating figures on a napkin. None of them saw the storm approaching. They were too busy dancing on my grave to notice that the ground beneath them was about to open up and swallow them whole. Marcus was in the middle of a joke about how much he would save on alimony payments when the double doors of the operating suite flew open with a violence that made the frame shudder. The sound cracked through the hallway like a gunshot, silencing their laughter instantly. I watched on the monitor as Dr. Sterling stepped back out. He was no longer the somber messenger of death. He ripped the surgical mask off his face, crumpling it in his fist, and stared directly at my husband. Wait. Doctor! Sterling shouted, his voice echoing off the sterile tiles. There has been a mistake. The 3 of them froze. A flicker of annoyance crossed Marcus's face, but beneath it, I saw relief. He thought the mistake was clerical. He thought perhaps I had forgotten to sign a final asset release form before dying, or that there was an issue with the insurance paperwork. A mistake, Marcus asked, stepping forward and adjusting his tie, trying to regain his composure. What is it? Did she not sign the release? Look, I am the next of kin. I can authorize whatever you need. Dr. Sterling did not look at the clipboard. He walked right up to Marcus, invading his personal space until they were nose to nose. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a theatrical whisper that carried clearly to every corner of the silent room. It is twins. Doctor, Sterling hissed. Marcus blinked, confused. What it is, twins, the doctor repeated, louder this time, a savage grin breaking across his face. And their mother has been watching you perform this entire time. On the screen. I saw the blood drain from Marcus's face so fast it looked like a physical blow. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. That was my cue. The recovery room doors swung open. I did not walk out. I was pushed out in a wheelchair by the head nurse, sitting tall and regal. In my arms, wrapped in blue and pink blankets, slept Noah and Emma. I was not the pale, lifeless corpse they had just toasted to. I was alive. I was furious. And I was staring right at them. The silence that fell over the hallway was heavy enough to crush bones. Marcus's knees actually gave out. He did not just stumble. He collapsed toward the floor, catching himself on a row of plastic chairs. His eyes bulged as if he were seeing a revenant. He looked from me to the babies, and then back to me, his jaw working uselessly. "Elena," he croaked, his voice a broken whisper. "But you." Vanessa was the first to react with pure survival instinct. She let out a sharp gasp, her eyes darting around the room like a trapped animal. She took a step back, then turned on her heel, aiming for the elevator. "I have to go," she stammered. She made it 3 steps before 2 large security guards stepped out from the stairwell, blocking her path with crossed arms. She skidded to a halt, looking back at Marcus in panic. Beatrice, however, was still trying to process the technicality of her lost fortune. She pointed a shaking finger at Dr. Sterling, her face twisting into a mask of indignation. But the machine she sputtered, her voice rising to a shriek. We heard the flatline. "The monitor said she was dead. You said she was dead. This is malpractice. I will sue this entire hospital, Dr." Sterling looked down at her with cold, clinical disdain. "That was not malpractice, madam," he said calmly. "That was a standard hospital protocol known as a simulated code blue. It is a psychological stress test used in extreme cases where we suspect the patient is in immediate danger from their own family. We test the reaction of the next of kin to the news of death to determine if protective services need to be called." He paused, looking at Marcus, who was now trembling on the floor, and then at Vanessa, who was cowering near the wall. "And I must say, Doctor," Sterling concluded, his voice dripping with ice, "you have all failed the test spectacularly." I looked at Marcus. He was still on his knees, staring up at me with a look of absolute terror. He knew, in that moment, looking into my eyes, he knew that the woman he had bullied, cheated on, and tried to discard was gone. The woman sitting in front of him was someone else entirely. "Hello, Marcus," I said softly. "Meet your children, Noah and Emma. Take a good look. It is the last time you will ever see them." Arthur stepped forward, the heels of his polished Oxfords clicking rhythmically against the hospital linoleum. He carried the thick leather binder that Marcus had signed just hours ago in the conference room. With a flick of his wrist, Arthur tossed the heavy file onto the plastic waiting room chairs. It landed with a loud, final thud that made Beatrice jump. "You really should have read the contract." "Marcus," Arthur said, his voice smooth and cold as liquid nitrogen. "You were so eager to get your hands on the $50 million that you skipped the section on conduct and liability." Marcus stared at the binder, his chest heaving. What are you talking about?" Arthur opened the file to a page flagged with a red sticky note. He adjusted his glasses and began to read. "Clause 88, Arthur declaimed, his voice projecting clearly. "In the event that Party B, being Marcus Sterling, is found to have committed acts of infidelity, or is proven to have neglected the physical and emotional well-being of his spouse during the final trimester of pregnancy, 100% of all company shares, personal assets, and real estate holdings shall be transferred unconditionally to Party A, Elena Sterling or her appointed guardian." Marcus's face turned a shade of purple I had never seen before. That is illegal. That is fraud I never agreed to, that you signed it," Arthur replied calmly, pointing to the signature at the bottom of the page. "And we have video evidence of you signing it willingly. Furthermore, we have a supplementary clause regarding the progeny." Arthur flipped the page. "Clause 88, Section B. In the specific case of a multiple birth, meaning twins or triplets, the Children's Trust Fund is activated immediately upon delivery. Furthermore, if the father has demonstrated behavior that endangers the mother or children, he is to be stripped of all custodial rights pending a federal investigation." You have no proof, Marcus screamed, lunging forward, though the security guards blocked him easily. It is her word against mine. Arthur gestured toward the ceiling corner where a small black dome sat, and then pointed to the recording device I was now holding up in my hand. We have the hospital security footage of you wishing for your wife's death, Arthur said. We have the audio recording from your study where you planned to hide assets, and we have your text messages to your mistress sent from the operating room waiting area. It is airtight. Marcus, you are done. Marcus spun around to Vanessa, looking for an ally, but Arthur held up a hand. And regarding Ms. Vanessa, Arthur continued, a small, satisfied smile playing on his lips. You might want to know who you have been sleeping with. Marcus, she is not just a secretary. She is a corporate espionage agent for Cyberdyne Systems, your biggest competitor. Marcus froze, his eyes widening in betrayal. He looked at Vanessa, who had stopped struggling against the guards. Her face had shifted from fear to a cold, hard sneer. You were stealing from me, Marcus stammered. You made it easy, honey. Vanessa spat, dropping the innocent act completely. You leave your passwords on sticky notes? I sent the schematics for the new processor to Cyberdyne weeks ago. I was just waiting for the bonus check to clear before dumping you. Marcus looked like he had been punched in the gut. He had been played by everyone. I had tricked him to save my children. Vanessa had tricked him to destroy his company. At that moment, the elevator doors opened again. 4 uniformed police officers marched in. Vanessa Lewis, the lead officer, asked, You are under arrest for the theft of trade secrets and corporate espionage. He turned to Marcus. And Marcus Sterling. We have a warrant for your arrest regarding wire fraud and embezzlement. Mr. Arthur has provided the district attorney with a very interesting paper trail. As the officers slapped handcuffs on Marcus's wrists, the metal clicking shut with a sound of finality, Beatrice let out a wail. She grabbed the officer's arm. Wait, what about the house? She shrieked. What about my allowance? I have nothing to do with this. The house belongs to Elena now. Beatrice, Arthur said, closing the binder. Security will escort you off the premises. I suggest you start looking for a motel. The cheap kind. Beatrice collapsed into the chair, sobbing dry, tearless sobs for the money she had lost. I looked at Marcus one last time. He was being dragged toward the elevator, struggling against the officers. He locked eyes with me, his face a mask of desperation. Elena, he screamed, his voice cracking. Elena, please, I am the father. You cannot do this. Elena. I did not say a word. I simply adjusted the blanket around Noah's sleeping face, checked that Emma was warm, and pressed the joystick on my electric wheelchair. I turned my back on them, rolling smoothly toward the VIP suite where peace awaited. Behind me, the elevator doors closed, cutting off Marcus's screams, leaving only the beautiful sound of silence. 6 months have passed since the night the old Elena died on an operating table and the new Elena rose from the ashes. I sat in the corner office on the 42nd floor, the city of Chicago sprawling out beneath me like a map of conquered territory. The sign on the building no longer said Omnitech. It now read Phoenix Corp., a name I chose because we had burned everything to the ground to build something stronger. Under my leadership, the company stock had risen by 40% in the last quarter alone. I did not need a man to build an empire. I just needed to stop carrying the dead weight of one. Over in the corner of my office, inside a custom-made playpen filled with soft toys, Noah and Emma were busy gurgling at each other. They were the center of my universe, healthy, happy, and growing faster than I could keep up with. Being a single mother and a CEO was exhausting, but it was a good kind of exhaustion. It was the fatigue of building a future, not the fatigue of surviving a lie. The vultures, as I liked to call them, had been scattered to the winds. Beatrice had learned the hard way that reputation was a fragile currency. With no money coming in and her assets frozen by the lawsuits Arthur had filed, she had been forced to sell the family estate for a fraction of its value to cover her debts. She was currently living in a cramped one-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood she used to sneer at. The neighbors there knew exactly who she was, thanks to the scandal hitting the tabloids, and they made sure she felt unwelcome every time she stepped outside. She was alone, bitter, and irrelevant. Vanessa had fared no better. The corporate espionage charges had stuck. While she managed to avoid jail time by turning state's witness against Cyberdyne, her career was over. No company would touch her with a 10-foot pole. The last report from my private investigator placed her in a roadside diner in Nebraska, waiting tables and living off tips. And then there was Marcus. Because he had cooperated with the fraud investigation, his prison sentence had been suspended. Instead, the judge had given him 3,000 hours of community service. The irony was delicious. The court had assigned him to the custodial detail for the downtown business district. I glanced at the clock. It was noon. "Ready for lunch?" Arthur asked, stepping into my office. "Starving," I replied, picking up my purse. We went down to the French bistro on the ground floor. It was a place Marcus used to refuse to eat at because he said the clientele wasn't exclusive enough. Now, it was my favorite spot. I sat at a window table with Arthur and Dr. Sterling, the two men who had actually saved my life. We were laughing about Noah's attempt to eat mashed peas when a shadow fell over our table. I looked out the window. There, on the other side of the glass, stood a man in a neon orange safety vest. He was holding a squeegee and a bucket of dirty water. His hair was thinning, his face was gaunt, and he looked 20 years older. It was Marcus. He froze when he saw me. He looked at the food on our table, then at Arthur and Dr. Sterling, and finally, his gaze locked onto mine. Through the thick glass, I saw his lips move. Please. His eyes were filled with a pathetic, desperate longing. He looked like a dog that had been kicked out into the rain, begging to be let back in near the fire. He wanted forgiveness. He wanted his life back. I felt nothing, no anger, no sadness, just a profound sense of indifference. He was a stranger to me. I offered him a small, polite smile. Then I reached up and grabbed the cord for the window blinds. With a sharp tug, I pulled them down, blocking him from my view completely. "Who was that, Dr.?" Sterling asked, buttering a roll. "Nobody," I said, turning back to my family. "Just a stain on the window." I took a sip of my wine and looked at the two strollers parked next to our table where my twins were sleeping soundly. I realized then that the sweetest revenge was not about making them suffer. It was about living a life so brilliant, so full of love and success, that they could never touch it again. I had won. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. So please drop a comment below and let's chat. If you enjoyed this story of justice and empowerment, please make sure to subscribe to the Mia Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and smash that hype button so we can share this journey with even more people.